Hello everyone. Right away I want to thank you for coming back to my channel for another video. Today I'm doing a short walkthrough of the second half of the first unit of the undergraduate creative writing class that I teach at Johns Hopkins University. The unit is titled Detail and Scene, and this video is all about scene. I'm going to try not to mess this plant up too much, and we're going to get down to it. All right, so we'll be reading two short stories from the Norton Anthology of Short Fiction. Word on the street is, though, that if you don't have $90 to spend on a brick of an anthology, that all the stories are available as PDFs online, although this is not an endorsement to illegally read stories on the internet. These are trying times, and we all have to do our part to feed the mega corporations. But again, they're all available online for free as PDFs. Anyways, the short stories we're talking about this unit are Araby by James Joyce and Girl by Jamaica Kincaid. Those videos are forthcoming. They'll be here soon. Right now, we're just talking about scene and how scene works in fiction and in stories more generally. But before we go any further, I'm gonna ask that same question that I know the algorithm is always dying for me to get to, and also because I wish for the algorithm to be merciful with me. So I'll pose the question, why do I think this video is worth your time? I think this video is worth your time because whether you want to be the next great novelist, or you're just interested in becoming a better writer or a better reader, or you have no idea how or why you're watching this video, familiarizing ourselves with the tools of fiction can make us better storytellers. And becoming better storytellers is an extremely valuable life skill. This is something I try to communicate to my students at Johns Hopkins. It's easy to think of storytelling as something that's unidimensional. When I ask my students what they think of when someone says storyteller, the answers tend toward the literary end of the spectrum, or just, I'll say the entertainment end of the spectrum. I think that's better, whether it's script writing or novel writing, poetry, whatever. But the reality is, telling a story is perhaps the most fundamental skill any person can have. Telling stories is something virtually every person does every day. It happens at work, at home, in public. Any time that we communicate with another person, we're acting as a storyteller. And for that reason, I think it's in almost everyone's best interest to familiarize themselves with the tools of storytelling in the artistic sense of the word, because it can function as a guiding metaphor that's virtually universally applicable. So that was all kind of a mouthful, but anyways, let's talk about scene. When I talk with my students about what scene is, most of them have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. We've all watched movies or TV shows. Most of us have kind of a vague idea of what a scene is, even if we can't articulate it. But I want for my students to have a sharper understanding of what a scene is, what a scene is. So I usually refer to the definitions Google provides. I work from something general towards something more focused. So Google gives two definitions. The first definition for scene that Google gives is, quote, the place where an incident in real life or fiction occurs or occurred. And I don't really like this definition at all, if I'm being honest, so I'm kind of just gonna fly right on past it because I want something that can help us construct a guiding metaphor that will help me and my students not just understand the definition, but apply the definition to more aspects of our lives than just, my creative writing class. The second definition for scene that Google gives is, quote, a sequence of continuous action in a play, movie, opera, or book. I prefer this definition because of the first 5 words, quote, a sequence of continuous action, end quote. My experience is that this usually matches with the general idea of scene that we, meaning myself and my students, have in our heads. So let's talk a little bit more about it. All right, so when we talk about scene in the context of a work of literature, what we mean is something like a scene of continuous action. So what good is this definition? Insofar as I can tell, it brings us to a 3-way fork in the road, meaning there are basically 3 different ways, as I see it at least, that we can apply this definition. We can apply it as a reader or a viewer to make our reading experience easier, meaning as we're working through a text or watching a movie or show, we can think to ourselves, okay, that was a scene, which kind of sounds silly, yeah, but I would argue it's a way we can get the most out of the time we give to fictional works. Or we can apply it as a writer or a content creator to make our particular act of creation more intentional and focused, meaning Once we can grasp what a scene is, we can contextualize it, at least in theory, among a plethora of other scenes, and in that way we can tell a story. So it's a way of kind of getting out of the soup, so to speak, and kind of being able to have the oversight to imagine a project and construct a project using individual pieces. And you might not agree with me yet, but I'm telling you, and I hope that at some point you'll take my word for it, that regardless of what you want to do, you're going to be better at it if you can tell a story. But okay, the third fork in the definitional road is as a learner. This, I think, is the most valuable way to digest the idea of scene and fictional craft elements more generally, as kind of a polymathic learner. But what do I mean by that? I mean that having a working definition for a scene is obviously going to make reading a work of fiction easier. It's going to allow us to better digest the project because we'll be able to break it down into its simpler parts. This is kind of an amalgamation of all three forks, the idea of being a polymathic learner. And we can take the idea of a scene and its definition and apply it to different aspects of our lives in such a way that's going to make us better storytellers. So when I used the term polymathic learner a moment ago, what I was getting at is that there's a way we can synthesize the fundamental value that the definition offers from a viewer's point of view and from a content creator's point of view. And I make this point to get us thinking about how reading fiction and familiarizing ourselves with the craft elements of writing can translate to real skills that are universally applicable. So here's my advice when you read the stories that lie ahead of us, or when you read any fiction on your own, or maybe better yet, any time that you're consuming any type of story, whether it's a movie, a TV show, a YouTube video, a book, a news column, you get the point. Remember the definition of scene, not necessarily because it's exciting and interesting. I understand that it really isn't either of those things, but I'll say that I'm trying to help you actualize your full potential and achieve your goals, whatever those ideas mean for you. And I say that because I think training ourselves to digest content in terms of kind of the whole project at the collective level, but also based on, its simpler parts, it puts us in a better position to optimize the time we spend consuming information, which I think transcends the act of reading fiction. It becomes a universally applicable tool in a way. Having a working definition of scene in fiction and applying it to the stories we consume can become the kind of habit that puts us in a better position to learn more from every sort of story that we spend time with. Meaning that by training ourselves to consciously understand a story as a result of its parts, we're putting ourselves in a better position to tell better stories in every sense of the idea. And because being a better storyteller goes far beyond the realm of just writing fiction, it's a skill we're all constantly relying on, whether we know it or not, in a business environment, in a professional environment, an academic environment, a social environment. You name it. Okay, that's everything I got. Before I go, I just want to say that if you enjoyed this video, if you found it interesting or useful or helpful, I ask that you please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really means a lot to me. And let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I'd love to chat. And now I want to thank you, my lovely viewer, for sticking with me to the end. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.